Good evening. I'm Dan Weiss, the President and CEO of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you with us this evening for a virtual visit to the Met. Even if we can't open our doors to the public just now, we can come to you and share various aspects of what the museum has been doing and some of the people who have been working here over the last several months. During the last 150 years, as the museum's own history has evolved, what began as a fledgling idea built by members of the community has turned into one of the great cultural institutions in all of the world. During that time, over the last 150 years, we have experienced a great deal, many challenges along the way. We have in the past faced pandemics. We have had financial crises like the Great Depression and others. And we have also had periods of social upheaval. But I don't think ever in our history have we faced all of those things at the same time as we are facing it now in this very difficult moment. So we are sure that the Met will get through this and will continue to thrive as a great institution in service to the local community, the nation, and the world. And this evening, we wanted to bring you in and talk a little bit about some of what's been going on here. We have a very special program in place with this evening. You'll hear from some of the essential workers who keep the museum running. You'll have a chance to experience a performance by Roseanne Cash. And we'll learn more about the Met's Civic Practice Partnership Artists in Residence program, among other things. So it's a very full evening, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. The museum over the last several months has been maintained and staffed by the essential workers. These include members of the security staff, the buildings team, engineers, collections care specialists, and others who have come to the museum on a regular basis to make sure that the building is secure, the environment is safe, and the works of art in our collection are being well protected and preserved, as they always are. And we're going to hear in the first part of the evening from them. They'll tell you a little bit about the work that they do, some of the interesting things that they've been dealing with, and then the program will go on from there. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for being with us.
It's been really eerie. We've been through lots of closures before, hurricanes, Y2K, but we always knew we were just coming right back, 9/11. But this one just felt so much different because of the great unknown. When this all started, it was really very scary for the staff. You know, it was the great unknown. The whole world was shutting down.
First, I was very nervous and scared and everything because I didn't know what was going on. But after, I learn and I observe, and it becomes a little lonely, especially you see so many people in here, and then all of a sudden, nobody here.
How could we possibly know what to expect? This was so completely, out of left field, and there was just a lot of unknown and anxiety, not knowing, especially when we come back.
I missed everybody. I miss working here.
But we boiled our tasks down to the bare essentials. We needed to have engineers in here to maintain the temperature and humidity. It's essential to the safety of the art.
This is like the command center here. We watch all the alarms come in, humidity, temperature, high level alarms, low level alarms, and then we look on this side over here and we can see all the chillers and all the cooling towers, all the air conditioning system. The temperature was running, was not.
We have to have security guards, and of course, then I have to have custodials here. And those people just showed up. God bless them. I can't express my gratitude anymore. It's just incredible what they've done. They all came, showed up, did their work.
On March 12th, it was very different from the standpoint that there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns. And more importantly, we didn't know exactly what our role would be as it relates to interfacing with the city, the public health officials, as well as the federal officials. Once that was defined, the leadership team, led by Dan Weiss and Max, we put together a plan and we executed accordingly.
We're responsible for maintaining the 3 gardens that are associated with the collections here at the Cloisters, and we're also responsible for maintaining the grounds immediately outside of the museum. It's remarkable how well the gardens have held up during the closure, and most of that is due to the fact that my colleagues Carly Still and Yvette Weaver and my predecessor Caleb Leach had planned out the spring gardens here very carefully and executed it beautifully.
So right now we're standing in the Judy Black Garden, which is in the Kusha Gallery. It's a beautiful space in here. And this garden is very exciting because it is more of an ornamental garden. And we get to play a little bit more in this garden because we don't have to be very specific about the type of plants that are in here. So most of these plants are based off of medieval plant species. But as you can see, it's still really blooming.
This is a tree garden, and the story that this garden tells is that it is in close connection to the unicorn tapestries, which is the Cloisters' prized possession. So most of the plants that are planted in this garden are depicted in the unicorn tapestries. I think the beauty of this garden, to me, is being pulled in by one single flower. And I think that that's what the unicorn tapestries also does. You really kind of, your eye catches one thing and want to go in and explore. So I think that this garden is also a garden of observation.
The irony, and the sad irony, is that all this beauty and all this planning went largely unviewed. We tried to get photographs and videos out, but it's not the same as being here. It was kind of bittersweet in the fact that everything worked out the way they had hoped it to, and nothing was really viewed by the public or even members of the staff.
We really left here just like in the middle of, it was just, everything was just kind of like left in place. So we were in the middle of like preparing for the spring and plantings when we kind of walked away from it all. And so coming back, everything was just kind of very wild and fuller.
This is a young garden. We just planted it a couple years ago, so it felt like this was really reaching its maturity for some of these plants. So it was really quite sad that visitors weren't able to see it.
Being here by myself, being here in solitude, allowed me to appreciate almost every aspect of this facility. Being able to contemplate the effigies and the stained glass and the paintings by myself without crowds around me, I think it's really hastened and deepened my understanding of the way that the gardens interact with the collections. Being back together with my team is, on the one hand, wonderful, and on the other hand, it's a little bit intimidating, because both Carly and Yvette have been here a long time. You wouldn't think to look at it. Carly's been here nearly 10 years, and Yvette's been here, I think, about 6 years. I look forward to continuing to develop our relationship, and I think it's off to a pretty good start.
It's now just kind of starting to come together because we really haven't had an opportunity to be here that often. So a little bit of like piecemeal work that's happened, and for the past 3 weeks, I feel like we finally have gotten the gardens to the place that they should be. And I think it's looking really beautiful right now. I'm really excited about it. It's nice to walk out here this morning.
I think that we're always sort of thinking ahead about what our next display is going to be. So I think that when we closed, we were projecting that we would be reopening in the fall. So everything that we've added into the garden is intentional, that it'll have sort of some interest or be flowering for when we reopen to the public.
The closure didn't so much change the way I approach my job as it formed the way I approach my job, because I had no previous experience here. All I've known for the vast majority of my time here is solitude and these very, very strange circumstances. So the time that I begin really learning my job is now, as staff are coming back and we look forward to the return of the visitors.
Well, I miss the people, extraordinary colleagues and just the life of the visitors coming from around the world. It's so different. Normally we're focused on new exhibitions and events and offerings for our visitors, and now it was just the bare essentials, just taking care of the building and each other.
It also shows that the Met is such a strong family, that everyone really came together at this moment that was really needed.
It's kind of sad, because we're accustomed to seeing so many people. We have friends, and then now we don't see nobody. It's very sad.
What was so great is, the whole world was running away from this virus, and our custodians were going to those places where it had been identified as, the elevators, the common areas, the restrooms, and that's where they went. And they diligently did their jobs, protective equipment, all the right procedures, but still, they went in pursuit of that virus, and it was never had to push anyone to do the work. They really felt dedicated and responsible.
It's going pretty well. We're just taking our time and getting all the areas that we need to get for the public to be open, and just making sure things are clean. Hitting all the areas that we need to hit.
The staff that has been here from, let's say, March 13th on were the individuals that were identified as the essential core security department team. They have been outstanding. They have risen to every challenge. They've answered the bell for every issue that we needed to address as a team, and they've been very professional. But the thing that I've been most impressed with is their commitment to the mission, to the security mission for the department, but overall the mission of the institution, whether it was open or closed. They've been very professional in that regard.
Greatest success, as I mentioned, was that we all came together literally overnight, trying to work through this together, find a solution. How are we going to care for this collection? We don't even know how long the museum is going to be closed. And everyone had such a trust and goodwill. Everyone was in together. And I think that's how this program was so successful, is that everyone trusted us and everyone came together in ways that I've never seen before. The Met has always been a great family, but this really showed what a strong family the Met is. And I'm definitely going to remember that, and I'm going to remember that we all can count on each other and be there for each other and trust each other. Yeah.
It has been good to see our colleagues return back to work, and obviously there's some semblance of normalcy, if you will, with the arrival of those colleagues. But it also has reemphasized the fact that even that we're trying to get reaccustomed or reacquainted with one another. There's a little trepidation there as well, and so we have to be cognizant of that and make sure that we're working with each other and communicating with each other, so there are no conflicts, if you will, in the different areas of responsibility.
Well, one of the unforeseen development of these rounds was that we had to take care of the koi fish in the Astor Court in the Asian art department, and that was really wonderful to have to care for these living creatures in our building. Did not know we had fish that we had to take care of, and these poor fish were all of a sudden were not going to be fed. So you would not believe the number of emails that went around about the koi fish, how much to feed them, how often, are they moving today? They don't seem too well. I wonder, are they okay? The water levels, the algae. It was a new world. It was kind of wonderful.
It's going to be a different dynamic when the museum reopens, especially for the security department and visitor services. We're the front line. We have to have face-to-face engagement and contact, And we have to make sure that, we're firm in the guidance that we're providing, but we also have to be flexible enough to understand that it's going to be just as uneasy for those visitors as it will be for us when they return. How do you safeguard a place like this, an iconic and majestic institution like this, but also make it a very welcoming institution to be visited?
We love our members, we thank you, and we look forward to welcoming you back. We're working hard, but we've increased our cleaning standards, and we are here to provide a safe and welcoming place, and we look forward to seeing you all back.
Hello, I'm Max Holland, Director of the Met, and I want to welcome you here from my office at the Met, and want to see how glad we are that you could meet us at the museum, even if only virtually for now. While I'm delighted that we can connect with you in this way, reopening the Met, opening our doors to our visitors is an important signal for New York City and for all of us. The Met has never been closed for longer than 3 days, much less 5 months. And I know I speak for everyone when I say that we can't wait to see you again and for you, our public, to reunite with your favorite artworks and spaces within the museum. As you have just seen, Met staff have been hard at work this past month, completing important projects throughout the museum that have been on hold due to the closure. When the Met reopens, a number of new exhibitions will debut. Most importantly, of course, making the Met the signature exhibition, marking also our 150th anniversary, which will lead you in an immersive, thought-provoking journey to the museum's history. The history of the Met is also the history of New York, and it is also a history of the development of encyclopedic museums within the last 150 years. In the show, we also celebrate the art that the Met makes accessible to the public. We commemorate the people who propelled it in new directions, and we investigate its place in society. In many cases throughout the show, we reflect with pride. In others, we recognize our place within fraught histories. We'll also be unveiling the important show Jacob Lawrence, The American Struggle. This exhibition presents the significant American modernist striking and so far little known multi-panel series Struggle from the history of the American people. Fully installed over the last few weeks, this show is truly a sight to behold. Lawrence's visual reckoning with America's complex history is all the more relevant today. Amid powerful calls for social justice and ongoing debate regarding race and national identity, it resonates profoundly. It's a pleasure to have Wendy Griffith, curator in the Department of Modern Contemporary Art, and Sylvia Yond, the Lawrence A. Fleischman curator in charge of the American Wing, here with us this evening to give a special preview. We've also been able to extend the closing dates of several shows, like the Sahel exhibition on African culture in the vast region around the Sahel zone, or in Pursuit of Fashion, Cindy Schreier's collection, which were already on view at the Met Fifth Avenue when we closed our doors in mid-March. Having them on view for all of you for some more weeks, this comes to all of us as a huge relief. It's so hard to imagine these projects, which we have worked on for several years and were the result of an incredible effort by so many people, be seen only by so few visitors. One important show is also Photography's Last Century, the Anne Tannenbaum and Thomas H. Lee collection. It's an exhibition that explores the history and legacy of photography from the last 100 years through a magnificent promised gift from Met trustee Anne Tannenbaum and her husband, Tom Lee, which was given in celebration of our 150th anniversary. We are certainly thrilled it will remain on view through November. And Jeff Rosenheim, the Joyce Frank mentioned curator in charge of the Department of Photographs, will give us a brief tour tonight. But we do hope you'll have the opportunity to come and enjoy it in person. As you'll find when the museum reopens, there is so much for you to discover, experience, and appreciate. Our galleries, collections, exhibitions, and so much more are waiting for you. Some of you might not have seen the newly and spectacularly reinstalled British galleries or extraordinary powerful crossroads installations, which at 3 prominent locations within the museum show the global history of humankind as a narrative of intersections and exchange. Please come and experience all of that at the Met.
So Sylvia and I are very excited to preview for you here and soon to welcome visitors to the museum to see this great show, Jacob Lawrence, The American Struggle, which focuses on a series that this great American modernist pursued from 1954 to 1956, a series he called Struggle from the History of the American People. And it's Lawrence focusing on episodes in American history from roughly the Revolutionary War to early westward expansion in American history.
Well, as you noted, Randy, Lawrence certainly a leading, very important early 20th century, mid-20th century modernist, but also the leading African-American painter of his generation, best known for his images of the Black experience, both historical and modern.
And a landmark aspect of this exhibition is that it's the first time that these panels have been reunited in 60 years.
That's right.
So, it's
30 panels.
Yeah, it's a series that people don't know quite so well. They might know the Migration series, other great series, historical series that Lawrence did, but people tend not to know so much the Struggle series. So I think it's going to be a revelation for so many of our visitors.
And we may want to say likely because it was broken up after its first display at Lawrence's gallery and has not really been seen together, as you say, in 60 years. So a lot of people don't realize it's part of this larger historical narrative. And it really is Lawrence's epic American story, and I think a very patriotic piece, and it's kind of focused on the violence and the sacrifice that is entailed in creating a more perfect union. And this is the moment for an exhibition like this, certainly.
Yeah, this exhibition becomes incredibly timely under the circumstances we've all been enduring, and especially in light of renewed calls for social justice with regard to race in this country.
Here he is in the mid-50s, really wanting to tell the story, a more truthful story about American history, and looking at the oft-overlooked contributions of African and Native Americans as well as women. That was really important to him.
Right, and also at this unique and difficult moment in American history in the mid-50s, against the backdrop of McCarthyism and also the nascent civil rights movement. So now I think we're going to spend a little time looking more closely at a couple of our favorites. One is a work that actually is in the Met collection that is in the shows and as part of the Struggle series. And another you would have seen a detail of as the signature image for the show. So we're going to turn our attention to those now.
The title that he assigns to his version of Washington crossing the Delaware: "We crossed the river at McConkey's Ferry, 9 miles above Trenton. The night was excessively severe, which the men bore without the least murmur." And I think just that emphasis on the men, where is Washington in this scene? Right. We don't see the great man, do we? We're focusing on the anonymous soldiers in this very cold night. It's really powerful.
The departure from the kind of historic man, right, narrative.
Great man narrative, absolutely a counter narrative. Well, I think this image, and really all the images as we've seen in this series, are just so extraordinarily powerful. And as you say, a very different type of approach to the subject matter. I mean, they're much more fractured, and there's kind of a violence to the structure and the formal structure, I think. And if you look carefully at all these panels, you do note that there are these bright splashes of red paint, which is obviously signifying blood. So again, using the form to underline the content of this violent sacrifice and struggle in the beginning of our country, of the United States.
Violence would have certainly had resonance in the 1950s. So again, this is the 18th panel in the series, and it has, as the Met panel does, again, a long rhetorical title drawn from a historical source.
I think it's a letter from Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, then President of the United States, 1803, to Lewis and Clark, to his fellow Virginians, who of course were leading an expedition in the American West.
And the excerpt here of the title is encouraging dignity and respect as they encounter indigenous people along the way, not leaving aside, of course, Jefferson's own
disregard,
disregard for the same. It's an episode that happens at a particular point in time where who are the protagonists in this picture? Like in the foreground, you see two figures facing one another. One is dressed in bright red and the other is dressed in bright blue. Well, I mean, once you see them, you can't take your eyes off them. But this is an episode where during was it a treaty meeting? where Sacagawea, who was a guide and a translator on the expedition, she's recognizing someone here, right? Who is this?
Her brother, right, who was a chief of a neighboring tribe, and they'd been separated since childhood. So the fact that Lawrence, as opposed to telling the canonic story of Lewis and Clark that we've all grown up with, only recently has Sacagawea really gotten some attention, as we know, that he's really highlighting that reunion in a sense, and that sense of recognition of these two indigenous peoples as the centerpiece of the show. And if you see to the left, Lewis and Clark are just these kind of, figures off to the side, as it were. Decentered, literally decentered.
Right, yeah, focused on this moment, this powerful moment of recognition between these siblings who had been long separated. And she's the one who recognized that it was her brother who was also involved. So it's this very poignant, tender, powerful moment. I mean, I guess for me, this is a sense of reunion that also, I guess, in this period of extended physical distancing and social distancing, it really, for me, pulls at this sort of longing for reconnection that I think, most of us have been feeling, or all of us have been feeling in different ways. And it's also just masterful example of Lawrence's technique.
And also just underlining the fact that that expedition would not have been successful had it not been for Sacagawea and other of the indigenous peoples that they met along the way. And I think he's really highlighting that in a critical way.
Yeah, it's an example of Lawrence focusing on the role of women in American history and also indigenous peoples.
People of color.
Yeah. Well, we're very excited to share this amazing project with you all when the museum reopens. And then the exhibition will open to the general public when the museum opens itself. So Sylvia, I think you and I are very excited to share this with all of our guests.
Absolutely. And just wanted to add that there'll be a series of virtual programs that we will be offering, since we will have no on-site educational programs, but we're planning some really interesting remote opportunities that we hope everyone can participate in.
Yeah, so please stay tuned for that information as it becomes available.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and this is my response to panel 11 in Jacob Lawrence's American Struggle. My poem is called Silent Cry. Bundles of whispers are buried from the youth, no matter the burden that comes with the truth. The wrinkles stay silent till their tomb. The children scream, hear our cry. As the youth grow, watered by deceit, no guilt is felt. No tides are lowered, only overflowed by the youth's desire of knowledge. The elders only see naive toddlers and feed them secrets. Teach us the history of our African roots, to love our history, to nurture our coils created by you. Teach us to love ourselves. You told us stories that were meant to protect and heal, to fabricate worlds of silence, happiness. But fibs do not last. Hear our cry, though it sounds like a whisper in the world of adults. Love is love. Stop being blinded by color. Norms of gender only stimulate unacceptance. The youth are falling. Our hurt ain't fading. In all the white noise we plead, hear our cry.
Hi, it's my great pleasure to provide an introduction to our special exhibition, Photography's Last Century. The show explores the achievement and legacy of photography in the last 100 years via a landmark promise gift to the Met from our trustee Ann Tenenbaum and her husband Tom Lee. This truly visionary gift is in celebration of the museum's 150th anniversary in 2020. Early in her life, Tenenbaum recognized that the camera was one of the most creative and democratic instruments of contemporary human expression. Within the context of their already established collection of groundbreaking works of post-World War II painting and sculpture, Tenenbaum and Lee began in the 1990s to acquire masterpieces of photography. In many provocative ways, Tenenbaum's collecting journey through the last century of picture making is a beat-inflected, lyrical road trip driven by a decidedly confident, refreshing, and intuitive feeling for the natural poetry of the medium. Tenenbaum's versatility and open-mindedness are the twin virtues that keep the collection and our exhibition so alive, expressive, and personal. This is a photograph by Cindy Sherman from 1979. It's considered by most the tour de force of Sherman's series of film stills that she began in 1977. Here, a lone woman on an empty highway peers around the corner of a rocky outcrop. She waits and waits. The photographs are unsettling, yet deeply satisfying syntheses of film and narrative painting. Robert Frank made this famous photograph in Charleston, South Carolina in 1955. It appears in his publication, The Americans. The book almost instantly changed the discourse of American photography. I've been thinking about this work and what Robert Frank said about his practice in 1961. Quote, "Black and white are the colors of photography. To me, they symbolize the alternatives of hope and despair to which mankind is forever subjected." The artist Gregory Crutzen made this photograph in 2005. He describes his highly scripted works as single-frame movies. To produce them, he engages teams of riggers, grips, lighting specialists, and actors. The storylines in most of his photographs center on anxiety, disorientation, fear, loss, and longing. Here, the final meaning remains elusive. A woman in a nightgown sits in crisis on the edge of her bed, with the remains of a rose bush on the sheets beside her. The journey from the garden was not an easy one, as evidenced by the trail of petals, thorns, and dirt, and yet the protagonist holds the plant's roots tenderly. A self-taught expert on the invention and history of photography and on Zen Buddhism, Hiroshi Sugimoto posed a question to himself in 1976. What would be the effect on a single sheet of film of the exposure of all 172,800 photographic frames in a typical full-length movie? To visualize the answer, he hid a large format camera in the last row of seats at St. Mark's Cinema and opened the shutter when the movie started, and an hour and a half later, closed it when the movie ended. The series, filled with gleaming white screens, presents a perfect example of dualism, the classic concept of opposites in ancient Chinese philosophy. This virtual tour is just a small taste of the many incredible works in the exhibition, Photography's Last Century, the Anne Tenenbaum and Thomas H. Lee collection. I hope you have the opportunity to see the show in its entirety, in person, when we reopen to the public. Now, I'd like to introduce Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter and author Roseanne Cash, who will be performing Particle and Wave. Roseanne chose this beautiful song because its lyrics resonate with many works of art in our exhibition. Later this fall, Roseanne will be returning for a special performance, Eye of the Collector, Roseanne Cash and A.M. Holmes, to be presented on the Met's Facebook and YouTube pages, where they will each reflect on the layers of meaning stirred by the images and themes found in works from Anne Tenenbaum and Tom Lee's remarkable and intimate photography collection. I hope you will be able to tune into that performance as well. And now, Roseanne Cash.
Anne and I have been friends for well over a decade, and I've never known anyone so kind and so generous. And the generosity of Anne and Tom will now serve for generations. Our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will still be benefiting from their generosity. And Anne says, she always says she's not an artist, but anyone with an eye as refined as hers, and anyone who sees the story underneath an image is indeed an artist. I'm joined here by John Leventhal And this song is called Particle and Wave, because without light, there is no photograph. Light is particle and wave. Our history's written large upon the page. The star in middle age. The love that fades to black, once revealed, won't be taken back. Light, nothing can escape. The ignorance we once forgave, and the future if we don't decide to change, and the things we cannot save, but it slows to shine upon your face. We owe everything, everything, everything to this rainbow of suffering. Light is particle and wave. Reflections of this place. Refractions of our grace. It reveals what we hold dear, and it slows so I can hold you near. We owe everything, everything, everything to this rainbow of suffering. Light is particle and wave. Our history's written large upon the page. The star in middle age. The love that fades to black, once revealed, won't be taken back.
Hello, my name is Suhaili Bautista Carolina, and I am glad to be here with all of you tonight as Senior Managing Educator for Audience Development and Engagement at the Met. It's my pleasure to introduce you to 5 trailblazing artists who are participating in the museum's Civic Practice Partnership Artist in Residence program. Launched in 2017, the Met Civic Practice Partnership is made possible by the William R. Keenan Jr. Charitable Trust and was catalyzed by the Met's visionary former Sandra P. and Frederick P. Rose, Chairman of Education Sandra Jackson Dumont. The residency program invites artists who are already deeply engaged and invested in their own communities to implement creative projects at the museum that positively impact neighborhoods across New York City. It is a vital part of the museum's ongoing commitment to develop and deepen collaborations and connections within communities across the city. For its inaugural year, the Met invited 2 dynamic lead artists, choreographer and performance artist Rashida Bumbray, working in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and multimedia visual artist Miguel Luciano, working in East Harlem. This summer, we welcomed 3 additional artists to the program. John Gray of artistic and culinary collective Ghetto Gastro in the South Bronx, May Loom of the WOW Project, a community organizing and art space in Manhattan's Chinatown, and musician and composer Toshi Regan, working in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Over the next 2 years, these dynamic artists will develop their ambitious projects while also participating in Met initiatives and programs to help forge meaningful collaborations, not just within, but beyond our walls. What you're about to hear from this cohort of artists is deeply rooted in how they are each engaging with their respective cultures, histories, legacies, identities, and communities. And as Rashida Bumbray notes here, how they tap into the rich continuum of their ancestors. Now, let's hear from the artists themselves.
In thinking about Carrie James Marshall's work through the lens of the conditions necessary for proficiency and mastery, I am reminded of the value of Black spaces. Black incubation spaces, like my childhood dancing studio, which was located in the basement of our church, so literally in an underground space. This was in a pre-gentrified Washington, D.C., which was still then known as Chocolate City. I want to think about the value of these Black incubation spaces in contrast to the contemporary realities of gentrification, displacement, erasure, and social forgetting. It was within this space, this underground space, where I was given access to a chain of transmission and the genius of Black repetition. Our teachers, Black women and Black queer men, emphasize the importance of repetition in our efforts towards the ultimate goal of dancing full out. And we understood that this full out was not only a physical state, but also a spiritual state where we could access a heightened experience reserved for those who had been given access to this transfer of knowledge. So when I look at the beauty, but also the feeling of loss in the Lost Boys series, boys who were killed at a young age, like Tamir Rice, like Trayvon Martin, like my brother George's best friend Tripp, also killed as a teenager. I think about the moral obligation not only to show Black suffering, but the moral obligation to attend to Black healing, as Carrie James Marshall does here, placing the tree of life into the landscape with our boys.
I surrendered my beliefs and found myself at the tree of life, projecting my stories into the veins of leaves, only to find that stories are subject to season. Run, Mary, run. Run, Martha, run. Hail Mary, run, I say. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. Run, Mary, run. Run, Martha, run. Tell Mary, run, I say. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Come to tell you, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you got a right. You got a
Hi, my name is Miguel Luciano, and I'm an artist in residence in the Civic Practice Partnership and Residency Program. I'm a visual artist based in East Harlem, and I make work that explores themes of history, popular culture, and social justice across a variety of different mediums, from paintings and sculpture to public art. During my first year in residence at the Met, I developed a public art project about the Young Lords and the activist history of East Harlem. Working with Iram Maristani, who was the official photographer of the Young Lords and one of the founding members of the New York chapter, we took 10 historic photographs of activist moments in East Harlem and turned them into billboard-sized images at the same locations where the history took place 50 years ago. We gave walking tours throughout the summer to commemorate this history and to put it in conversation with what was happening in the world at that moment and today. Last summer, we also saw widespread protests in Puerto Rico as people rose up against the corrupt government, demanding the resignation of the governor, and in protest of austerity programs and an unprecedented debt crisis. One of the impacts of the austerity programs is that hundreds of public schools have been closed on the island in recent years. Today, about 25% of all public schools in Puerto Rico have now been shuttered, and this was all before COVID. So I just returned from Puerto Rico, where I was working on a project that involved decommissioned school buses, one of the casualties among the school closures. So using the sheet metal from the buses, we recycled the bus's armor into protest shields. I was thinking a lot about the Arms and Armors galleries at the Met, where I've spent a lot of time, and about creating a kind of armor to protect people who are defending the future of our children's education on the island. Today, this work resonates in solidarity with the uprisings happening throughout the United States and the global protests against the violence of racism and colonialism in the world today. Social justice movements in East Harlem also shaped the first opportunities for Puerto Rican art to ever be exhibited at the Met. In 1973, the groundbreaking exhibition, The Art Heritage of Puerto Rico, was a collaboration with El Museo del Barrio, and that has been a focal point in my research in this residency. It was the first time that Puerto Rican art was ever shown at the Met. It featured pre-Columbian art to the present, from Taino artifacts to contemporary artwork. Right now, at the museum, you can see an extraordinary exhibition of Taino artwork in the exhibition Arte del Mar, Artistic Exchange in the Caribbean. I'm really privileged to be working with one of the objects in this show right now that's been a touchstone for me at the museum for years. It's a Taino artifact and artwork called the Semi Cohoba stand, and it's one of the most important Taino artworks made in wood in the world. It's about 1,000 years old and was a ceremonial object that was used originally for protection. It was removed from Hispaniola centuries ago and represents the first people of the New World, before European colonization. Working with curator James Doyle and the Met's imaging department, we were able to produce a 3D scan of this object. And with the digital file, we were able to then get a 3D replica milled and produced. This is a work in progress, but the idea in creating the replica was to symbolically free the Sami from its glass vitrine so that it can exist in a space outside of the museum. It'll eventually be experienced in a community context where people who share in its history and heritage can have direct access to it. One of the questions I'm asking in the work with institutions is, how do we decolonize the terms of engagement with our art and our history? In the Civic Practice Project, artists are exploring how to access institutional resources in service of the work that we do in our own communities. This is some of the work in progress and a preview of some of what's coming in 2021.
Wingawa is the oldest shop in Chinatown, 91 years old this year. It's been in my family for 5 generations, so started with my great-great-grandfather who came to America as a merchant.
Back in the day when mother-in-law took over in the mid-60s when her dad passed on. So she had a crisis at that time. And for the past 50 years, my father-in-law and mother-in-law carried this business along and passed it on to us. This picture of all of us gathering here and having meals and going through our routines, opening the store 7 days a week, was a picture that all of us have in our minds when we venture beyond the boundaries of Chinatown and the store.
Leaving Chinatown for college and then leaving to go work and live abroad for 3 years, That courage that I had to leave home was rooted in my strong base here in Chinatown and with my family.
Mother-in-law and father-in-law are getting up in age. They're 93 and 87. It got to a point where they were getting too old to carry it on.
My family, I think they all were, they didn't really know what to do in the time that we were going through the motions of putting our building on the market, talking to a bidder, and almost signing. They all were kind of frozen. They were like, okay, it's happening. We can't do anything about it.
She was in a fork in the road. She was accepted to grad school. We were on the cusp of selling the business, so there's a lot of conflict and struggle with that.
I was the only one like jumping up and down, waving my arms like, no, this doesn't have to be something that just happens. And in the end, I didn't want it to be a decision that we regretted. And because we all live in the community, it's like, it would be so painful to walk past the storefront and see something else here instead of our space. At the same time, I had met a woman named Diane Wong. She walked into the shop in December of last year and was starting her dissertation research on the gentrification of Chinatowns in the US. And so that moment of meeting her and then spending 3 months interviewing different community stakeholders was a turning point for me, because I was able to listen to the stories of the people that make up my community, listen to the issues and the concerns. The visible changes are making people really nervous, and I think it's tough. I think that older generations are stubborn in their ways and stuck in their ways. They don't see the value in changing the way that they're doing things because it's been working for so many years. And for me, I mean, it is challenging to work in a multi-generational space. And I realize now that the work that I did in China and Thailand and Laos, I mean, working across cultures is not so much different than working across generations. There's still that same base, patience, open-mindedness, and just a willingness and curiosity to learn from the other person. So the WOW project started in May. We had come up with this idea of holding a really informal panel discussion showcasing second-gen, third-gen Chinese American business owners and asking them about how they see themselves playing a role in this cycle of a changing neighborhood, of gentrification, because they hold a lot of economic development power in their hands as businesses.
The initiative really is bringing people into a supportive environment, to encourage them to speak their heart and to tap into their intuition. Do not put yourself to sleep to cope with the world, because you have feelings, you have passion, you have interests, you have hobbies, you have an opinion about what's going on. Maybe it's the changes that I was talking about that you're having problems coping with.
I don't want for us to forget we are a shop in Chinatown, but we also exist in a larger space too, and what that means against a larger context, because our work is more powerful in that way if we're able to connect with other people.
You know, inviting others like ourselves. We're not more than or less than. We're not leaders, we're collaborators and cooperators, and it's about team building. It's about incorporating everyone into the truth about living together, not separate.
I'm John Gray. I'm co-founder of Ghetto Gastro, aka the Black Power Kitchen. The project that I'm focused on is Food as a Weapon. Food has been used as a tool as oppression and systematic injustice for ages. You can look at the food that's provided in the public school system, look at the food apartheid that we experience in neighborhoods like the South Bronx, which happens to be the poorest congressional district in the United States. The Bronx is also the home to the largest food distribution center of its kind in the world. The fish market is second inside Tuskegee and Tokyo. A lot of the food that leaves the Bronx goes to restaurants in Manhattan and around the city and throughout the Northeast, grocery stores and what have you. despite all of this, the Bronx is home to many food insecure neighborhoods and communities, largely communities of color. It's like you're feeding the masses, but yet the neighborhood is not reaping the benefits. But what we do reap is the fossil fuel emissions, which lead to a lot of the health conditions, whether it's we have the highest asthma rates in the city, it's high diabetes, which could be attributed to the diets and the food that's available. And when you think about the concentrated poverty and the benefits or the people that have food stamps or people that have EBT and SNAP benefits have a lot of restrictions on what they could buy and in the community. So we're just thinking about on how food can now be used as a tool to fight the systemic injustices and oppressive systems. So currently, in the response to COVID, we've been working with La Mirada and Rethink to feed 1,000 people in the community. And these are like frontline workers, but also people that have just been released from the prison industrial system, women in shelters with their families, elders that live in public housing. A lot of them, the elevators aren't working and they're broken and these people can't leave their homes. So the team has been walking up the steps to make sure like these people get fed and have meals. So nourishment for the mind, body, and soul is important, and it starts with the basics. You want to have shelter, you want to have food, and hopefully clean air to breathe. So La Mirada, has been a pleasure to partner with them because they're community centered. I look at them like a community organization that just happens to cook and sell food, but they're run by a family of undocumented immigrants. It's just an amazing family, and we had the pleasure to connect the dots with Rethink to make sure they were able to get the resources to put these meals out. And it got me thinking, like, all right, this is really the work I need to be doing. Like thinking about how we leverage the resources, bring people together for the benefit of the Bronx, and hopefully that groundswells and affects the world. And in addition to the working with the restaurants, it's also working with the radical gardening community in the Bronx. There's so many dope gardens like La Finca del Sur, run by Black and brown women. We have the Brook Street Garden, which is right around the corner from La Mirada, where they grow some of their stuff. In addition to growing food, the garden also works with youth that are released from prison, doing anti-recidivism work and also peacekeeping, like mediation, violence mediation, So thinking about food sovereignty, ending food apartheid, what that looks like, highlighting culture, sharing culture, breaking bread. I feel like the first social network was the dinner table. So how do we commune and share ideas and radical thoughts that could work to benefit the community, and really just starting with what we have, So we're thinking about how do we use our creativity, use the community and convene to create spaces. So we're thinking like a nonprofit restaurant space that's also beautiful, where it's like, if you're from the community, you can walk in and get a meal, pay what you can. Some days you might be able to pay $1, some days you might not even be able to pay anything. So, but we want the food to be delicious, we want the space to be beautiful, and just like really make it community using all of our tools. And these ideas are just sketches. Like I have 2 years to work it out and realize it. So we're looking forward to the movement and to what could be done, and working with the Met to hopefully give these artists a platform and having that conversation between the Met and the South Bronx, and getting the community engaged with the Met, and also getting the Met actively engaged with this community in a way that's poignant and also long lasting.
As you've seen from these remarkable activists, the arts play an important role in enacting change and uplifting diverse communities. Dan and I are committed to expanding the Met's programming and community outreach to make sure that everyone feels welcome within the museum. Over these past several months, so many people have expressed how much they miss being at the Met, and we are eager to welcome you all back to the gallery soon. In addition to the exhibitions I mentioned earlier, we are also excited to present the new roof garden commission by the Mexican artist Hector Zamora. It's a site-specific installation for the Met's Iris and B. Gerald Cantor roof garden, which will be set against dramatic views of Central Park in Manhattan. The roof garden is certainly one of the favorite places of many here in New York. And there's so much more to come in the fall, including the Costume Institute 2020 exhibition about time, fashion, and duration, which will trace a century and a half of fashion from the 1870s to the present, along a disruptive timeline on the occasion of the Met's 150th anniversary. We wanted to open the show, of course, originally on the first Monday in May, but we are now happy to share it with you in October. Of course, the Met will also continue its robust virtual offerings on the website and through our various social media channels. New virtual programs, events, performances, conversations with curators, educators, and artists, and activities will be added throughout what remains of the summer and fall. The Met Live Arts program has moved online, and this fall will showcase a number of special performances. In addition to the great American singer-songwriter Roseanne Cash, you'll see an astounding performance work from artist Lee Ming Wei and choreographer Bill D. Jones, choreographed and performed at the museum. You will hear ascendant countertenor John Holliday, Tony Award-winning Broadway actor, singer and songwriter Gavin Creel, and musician Review Joyner. The Met's education staff continue to create innovative virtual programming and classes for the Met community, including a virtual Teens Take the Met and a Career Insights event for college and university students, both being held in November. Additionally, Met members get access to exclusive member-only programming, including a 3-part weekly digital and video series. I encourage each of you to explore our extensive digital offerings as a way to engage with the Met collection from the comfort of your home. Check out Met Stories or our Timeline of Art History, our primers, giving you an engaging introduction to our most important shows, and much more. We are here for you and have really so much to offer. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight and for your dedication to this institution. Some of you have already made generous contributions to the museum, for which we are truly grateful. We hope each of you will consider a gift in support of the Met during this challenging time. The Met wouldn't be the Met without you, a museum of the world, in the world, and for the world.
There's something extremely powerful about wandering the Met in the dark, alone, among so many centuries of history, but without our staff and public here. It's also undeniably a sad experience. The museum was really meant to have visitors. The Met and all it has to offer is meant to be shared, open, accessible to everyone. That's its mission, and for the past 150 years, that's been our purpose. We have been a transformative space for people, shaping the way we see art and each other. It's a place, whether visited in person or online, where we can connect to our past, reflect on our present, celebrate our creativity, feed our curiosity, and appreciate our shared humanity. There are so many compelling stories contained, not only within each object, but within all the experiences individuals bring to this great institution, and of course, within the walls of the museum itself. For our anniversary year, the Met launched Met Stories, a year-long video series and social media initiative that features personal narratives we've gathered from the many people who visit the museum. For me, hearing these testimonials has reinforced what a unique role this institution plays in each person's life. From memories of a once-in-a-lifetime experience to intimate moments with loved ones, or a transformative encounter with a work of art. And I can't wait for us to generate memories together in the months and years to come as we open a new chapter in the museum's history. Perhaps now, more than ever, the Met can serve as a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the capacity of art to bring comfort, inspire resilience, and help us better understand each other and the world all around us. Of course, the museum is still evolving, and it is also crucial to reflect on how we can use the current moment to propel this institution forward in positive ways. With each new challenge comes new opportunities. As we look to the future, I know that we can do that together. So I'd like to thank you again for being with us this evening and for your collective commitment to this great institution, helping to make it what it is today and will be in the future. Thank you and good night.
Hello, I'm Andrea Bayer, Deputy Director for Collections and Administration and the organizer of Making the Met, 1870 to 2020. I'm excited to welcome you virtually for a sneak peek into this special exhibition as we work through the final days of installation. As the signature exhibition of our 150th anniversary year, Making the Met takes you on a thought-provoking journey through the museum's history. You'll find more than 250 incredible works of art from our collection, archival photographs, and innovative digital features, and you'll encounter the visionary figures and cultural forces that propelled the Met in new directions from its founding in 1870 to the present day. We decided to organize the show around 10 pivotal moments in the Met's history, moments that altered the DNA of the museum. But as we neared the show's original opening date in March, we unexpectedly found ourselves entering another one of those transformational moments. As you've heard from Max and Dan, the events of the last several months have prompted intense reflections on the role of the museum, some of which are reflected in revised labels for this show. Through it all, the staff has worked incredibly hard on this exhibition. From the early days of planning to the last few weeks of installation, it has been a tremendous team effort involving every curatorial area and numerous departments. I am grateful for everyone's collaboration and dedication. The exhibition's 10 sections are organized chronologically around a central axis, what we're calling the street. At one end of the street is a fabulous surprise, a beautiful view into Central Park through a window that has been covered up for over 20 years, serving as a reminder of how the museum's history is entwined with the evolution of New York City. The first section brings us back to the founding decades, when the Met was founded without art, a building, or professional staff. We see the initial priorities for the collection, including antiquities, excavated from Cyprus by the Met's first director, General Luigi Palma di Cesnola, and European Old Master paintings from the founding purchase of 1871. One of those paintings is Van Dyck's Saint Rosalie, protecting the city of Palermo during a plague. It has been installed in these galleries throughout the shutdown and has taken on new poignancy in the wake of the coronavirus crisis. The 1920s were another major moment for the Met. The opening of the American wing in 1924 was meant to establish a canon of good taste for the public and promote a vision of what it meant to be American. More recently, the American wing has worked to strengthen its holdings of work by historical artists of color in order to tell a more complete story of American art. In 1929, Louisine and Henry Osborne Havemeyer dramatically transformed the Met's collection with the bequest of nearly 2,000 objects, making ours one of the greatest collections of Impressionist painting and sculpture. The Met's 100th anniversary in 1970 was marked by reflection on the museum's past, present, and future. In the centennial era, we examined the museum's rededication to its encyclopedic mission through a greater commitment to non-Western and contemporary art. During this period, the Met unveiled then state-of-the-art installations dedicated to the arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, to Asian art, 20th century art, and Islamic art. In the final section, Broadening Perspectives, you'll find a display of the outstanding acquisitions from the last 30 years that represent curatorial initiatives to expand the collection and reconsider categories of art previously overlooked. In this gallery, we highlight the vision for the future set forth by Max Holland, wherein works of art are presented in rich contextual narratives in order to reveal complex social, political, and historical forces. This is just a very small taste of what Making the Met has to offer. We hope you can visit when the museum reopens, and we look forward to welcoming you back.